This is the Money Loves Women podcast, the podcast that guides women to wealth and an extraordinary life. Here's your host, Dr. Deborah Ekstrom.
Hi, this is Dr. Deborah Ekstrom for the Money Loves Women podcast. I realized I've not come to you solo for quite a long time. So today I am going to interview me. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to ask myself some questions and hopefully provide you with some really good information that will help you carry forward in your own journey, to your financial journey and your wealth journey and your personal fulfillment journey. So first question to me, what was your growing up years like? I ask everybody that question just to get some context. What was your growing up years like exactly? So I grew up on a farm, a dairy farm in southern Minnesota, right out in the Midwest. And it was in many ways a really great upbringing from the point of view that I learned about hard work. I learned that you had to achieve, and it was just sort of expected that we would achieve. We didn't have a lot of extras when I was growing up. We had electricity, and that was a great thing. We don't even think about it nowadays. We had running water, also a great thing, but we didn't have indoor plumbing at the beginning. I did not want to invite friends over because my town friends had indoor plumbing, and I didn't have that. And once that became an option, I could have friends over. So it was a little bit isolating from that point of view. I had good friends in town and wondered why didn't we just live in town and my father commute to the farm to work. I did learn hard work on the farm, and I still enjoy labor as an activity. It's one of my favorite forms of exercise. So I was lucky I got to have a horse on the farm. I had brothers and sisters. I had friends in the neighborhood. And our farm friends were our deepest friendships. Our farm friends would come over and help us with tasks like baling hay, shelling corn, things like that. Things that most people don't know anything about. But anyway, I did grow up with this great upbringing. There was an imbalance of power in my family, though, as far as finance was concerned. And some of that was around the fact that my father was the earner and my mother was the supporter. And as a supporter, she didn't have the same amount of say. So my father was a dairy farmer, so he milked cows, and that was our steady source of cash income. He also grew crops and raised animals for slaughter, and that was a seasonal source of income. For a while, my mom had chickens, so she got egg money. I'm not sure that was a lot of income, and I'm not sure exactly where that went. I suspect that went to help take care of the children's needs. Interestingly, I didn't have heat in my bedroom. There was a stovepipe that went through. I shared a bedroom with my sister. My brothers shared another bedroom where there was a propane heater, and my parents had no heat in their bedroom at all. We did have electric blankets, and we know now that's not a really smart thing to lay under an electrical current. That was our source of staying warm at night, though. I walked down a long driveway, even through the snow, to get on the school bus, and no, that's not a made-up story. So lots of great principles that get imparted, deep friendships, depending on one another to help each other out. But the home where I lived had a lot of tension. My parents got married young. They didn't have much money, and finances were always a source of tension. And I think it imprinted me with a sense of financial anxiety. Also, the powerlessness of my mother in the relationship made me vow that I would always have my own money. And I remember early on wanting to work at various tasks. My sister and I and some of our friends would walk through the soybeans and hoe out weeds. That was before the times of pesticides on broadleaf things, before we were poisoning all of our crops in that way. And we also detasseled corn, and what that is, the corn companies would grow fields of corn, and they would have rows called the boll rows, and they would have the tall corn that would be the tassel rows. And we walked along those rows, getting up very early in the morning before it got too hot. I think we got up at 4:30 in the morning, traveled to the fields with a friend who had a car that could drive. And we walked through the rows and pulled the tassels, the flowers, off the tops of the corn so that only the bull rows, the short corn rows, would spread the pollen on those ears of corn with the silk on the end where the pollen would fall and pollinate those corn ears. And that became the seed corn for the seed company. And that was a very interesting job and hot and required getting up very early in the morning. But we were paid well for the times, and we made a couple weeks of really good money doing that. I had some occasional babysitting jobs, but I didn't have the option to be waitressing or finding other work in town because that's not where I lived. So I can remember back when I was about 13 years old, I was with my best friend Christine, and we were talking about what we would like to do for our life work. I was interested in science. I wasn't that great in math. I didn't love math, but I loved science. And in fact, my early years were consumed with reading science fiction. I was a heavy science fiction reader. And I grew up reading because we didn't have a television. My mother would drive into town on the weekends, usually a Saturday, for groceries and to run errands. And we would go along, and she'd drop us off at the county library. And then she'd come back after she'd run her errands and pick us up. We could check out 5 books. I had 4 siblings. We each checked out 5 books. Maybe not my youngest brother. He was busy taking his motorcycle apart and putting it back together, more likely than not. But the rest of us were readers. My parents were readers. And we'd read our 5 books. We could read some of our brothers and sisters' books if we were interested. So I read many books every week in the summer. And that became my pastime and my escape. So I couldn't really find jobs. I did start to work, though, when I was in high school and could drive myself. And I found, because Christine and I had sat down and decided, since her father was a physician, a doctor, we thought, that sounds like a really great profession. It's science, it's helping people. Let's become doctors. So I got that in my mind that I'd like to be a doctor. And I think I did realize that in town there, the doctors lived in some of the nicest houses. Now, it's true, but I didn't seem to recognize it, that some of the business people actually had a much better standard of living than the doctors. But I did not recognize that at the time. I knew the doctors drove nice cars and they had nice homes, and it just seemed like a really great profession. I wasn't exposed to business, even though technically my father was a businessman. My parents both had education. My mom went to what they called normal school or a teaching school and taught for a while. My dad went to ag school and had training in agriculture. So it's fairly unusual to have a more advanced degree at that point in time. So my parents did value education, and we were expected to do well in school without anything being said. So that was my upbringing. And that's how I chose medicine as a path. And I must have been subconsciously influenced by the fact that it had a better income, most likely, than oceanography or painting or writing, which I also liked. So I had wide interests, but medicine became my focus. Now, my girlfriend, Christine, did go into medicine. She became a nurse, but she did not become a doctor like we'd planned. So anyway, I did go to a community college locally because I really did not want to spend a lot of money. I knew I was going to medical school and I didn't want to get a lot of debt. So I got some grants, some small loans, and I went to community college and had really great professors. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know about the Midwest is that the academic standards are really high in the local high schools and in the community colleges. So I took lots of courses, as many as I could. Was carrying a very full load, and I didn't have a lot of time for anything else besides helping out on the farm. I was dating at the time, so I was dating the local football hero. He'd wanted to date my sister, and she wasn't really interested in dating, and she sent him my way, and I thought he was pretty cute. And decided that he'd make a good boyfriend. So we dated for a few years, and I went to community college. And the wonderful thing about the University of Minnesota is, at that time at least, it would transfer all of my credits. And I transferred a lot of credits. Most other colleges wouldn't take them. And the interesting thing about now is community colleges can oftentimes be free for people who have a certain grade point average, but colleges have stopped accepting the transfer credits. And I'm sad to say, I think that may be a financial reason. They want the students to complete a 4-year degree and for that college to get all of the money, all of the tuition money. I'm not absolutely sure that's true, but that's what I suspect. So I went to community college, and then I transferred to the University of Minnesota. I did have to take one summer course that I couldn't get in time, but I finished in 3 years and a little bit more. I finished college that way and saved a lot of money as a result, not on tuition, but on living expenses and travel expenses and all the things that go with that. So I then had some time before medical school. I had 9 months before medical school, and I worked at the local clinic, and I did like it. I enjoyed medicine. I learned a lot, and then went off to medical school. So that's how all that happened. I didn't get really deep into money and finance at that point, but I was very interested. I wanted to learn how to make money. And it looked like medicine could be a pathway, both to fulfilling me in a career and bringing me a good income. So I then proceeded to go to medical school, where I was one of 33 women in my class. 33 women was the exact number that the medical school needed to get financial assistance from the federal government. Not one woman more. They also had Black women. We called them then Chicano women. They were Latino women. They were fulfilling their quotas in 2 ways at one time. So I was lucky to be there. I was happy to be there. And I spent about 14 years, if you count college and medical school, training, and ultimately enjoyed surgery. I like using my hands. And also ended up in plastic surgery because, remember, I like to paint. So I became an artistic plastic surgeon. And it's been a very fulfilling career for me. However, I then need to talk some more about what happened next. So my formal education was in surgery, and I actually made a little foray into psychiatry during that time. I wasn't so sure I wanted to stay in surgery because I thought all surgeons were like the ones that were training me in academics, and found out that wasn't true later. But so I made a foray into psychiatry, and I liked it. But it was a little bit slow for me, and what I discovered was I didn't have very many tools. There were a few medications. There was electroshock therapy. But aside from that, not many tools to help make patients better. It was a time when talk therapy was still very popular, but many things were not really on board yet. We didn't have great medicines. Coaching was just becoming a thing. And it looked to me like the psychologists were doing the coaching and they were having all the fun. And the psychiatrists were doling out medications and dealing with schizophrenics and the incurable among the mentally ill. And that didn't really sit well with me. I wanted something that would make a difference. So I did end up going back to surgery because I'd found plastic surgery. And plastic surgery was a combination of the mechanical, using your hands and developing the judgment, the artistic in forming the body parts. I didn't do cosmetic surgery at first, but I do now. And also the psychology, because it's all brain surgery, really. It's about being comfortable in your skin and all about how you present yourself to the world and your confidence in being in your body. And that was a really great fit for me. At the same time, all I could do was help women one-on-one. And most of my patients were women. I could only help one person at a time. And it wasn't until I realized, when a patient told me, you know, what's really going on is it's very clear when you walk in the room that you are on for everyone's success. And I didn't realize that that I emanated that. And I thought, how can I make more people successful all at once? And I had been thinking so much about money, finance. I was studying about business. I'd stopped completely reading fiction. I didn't read any more fiction. I only read nonfiction, and I read business, money, personal development. How can I become a better person? How can I be a more effective person? How can I be a kinder person? How can I develop my spirituality? I read a lot about spirituality. I was very interested in physics and in neuroscience and how the brain worked, how behavior worked around money, and how people presented themselves such that they could rise to higher levels and interactions that would create more success. At first, I was kind of quiet about my desire for success and money. Um, I was brought up to think maybe people that had money weren't such good people. And I didn't really know very many people who had money. So some people were better off than others in my community, but we weren't poor, but we also weren't rich. So I was always looking for ways to advance myself personally and financially. So in medicine, it's an interesting thing. You can make a fair amount of money, not know very much about how to manage money. So when I got some extra money, I knew that I needed to invest it. I knew that that's what I needed to do, but I didn't have any financial education. I didn't know much about investing at all. In fact, I knew almost nothing. My parents didn't teach me about investing. I never learned at school. No one around me was very open about their investing. And there I was. So I would invest and make mistakes. I invested in private equity long before I knew how risky it was and that the return, that you have to have lots of different things before one of them goes where it needs to go. I had high hopes because past performance had been very good. And then 2008 hit, and all of our private equity went bust. And I had a lot of retirement money invested there. I also worked with a private equity company that invested in oil and gas. And some of those leases did fairly well. It was fairly low risk, but I didn't know very much about gas and oil investing. So I had to learn. And it wasn't easy to learn because there wasn't much information. I invested in real estate and made some big mistakes. And that's when I really learned to study about real estate. And it's a broad field, and it can be risky. It can be time consuming. And there I was as a landlord, not very available or handy, so I couldn't fix my own furnaces or deal with that sort of thing on my own. And I didn't actually do very well with that. I didn't know some of the strategies that I now know. I didn't know anything about tax lien or tax deeds. I had just read one or two books about it and didn't really know how to proceed with that. Knew about hard money lending in real estate, but didn't know how to get into that. And I didn't really have the time. And I think women nowadays are so busy. They are raising kids. I was raising kids, 3 stepkids, 2 kids of my own, supporting a husband in his professional career as well, and trying to advance my knowledge in my medical career, as well as learn about finance, money, and investing. When I first got married, I was hoping that my husband would manage that all. And he had this philosophy that paying the bills once every 3 months was perfectly adequate. That seemed to happen that the lights would get turned off every time we had a house sitter. So I decided I would become the CFO, even though I didn't know very much about money. And thank goodness I did that. So I started paying the bills and managing that piece. And as a result, I really learned. And I'd never been taught by my parents even to balance a checkbook. But I did fairly well for myself, all things considered, even though I lost a lot of money investing. But I vowed to learn, and I started reading. I read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. I read Think and Grow Rich. And the first time I read it, I didn't get what I got out of it years later when I had more knowledge and more self-understanding. I went to Landmark Education. on the internet, it will, if you read reviews, it'll say it's a cult. It's one of the best educations I ever got. And I really learned about myself. I learned to manage myself. I learned about possibility. I learned how to make how to make decisions, and how to appreciate and like and have gratitude for what you have in front of you, and to choose it. And I also learned the biggest thing of all, that life means what you make it mean. So these were wonderful revelations to me. I'd never been taught this before, and it helped me tremendously in my growth. And I've continued at times in spurts to do self-development. And I think it's a huge piece of becoming successful and becoming financially astute. What are my general principles guiding my life? I'd like to talk about that. Next question I would ask if I was interviewing myself. I decided I wanted to live an extraordinary life. I was in a leadership program for women in the American Society of Plastic Surgery, and we learned some principles about having an extraordinary life, and that's really what I wanted. It meant, to me, having a life in alignment with my values and ideals, and that really helps you make decisions. If you know what your values and ideals are and make decisions in alignment. To have mastery, and I was studying surgery and trying to master finance and money and business principles as well, to make myself as successful as I could. Mastery is not only mastery of something. In fact, most achievers will attempt to master anything they attempt. They like to be good at things. So that's what high achievers do. And mastery of yourself. And I think that's underestimated. So mastering yourself, without that, opportunities pass you by. So learning to master yourself. And it's a great pillar supporting all of the skills of wealth building. We'll talk about that. So living a life in alignment with your values and ideals, mastery, self, and of something else, preferably that can create cash flow for you. Intimacy, so intimacy with a person, with your friends, and with a greater being, I think, is very important to living an extraordinary life. And the last thing being freedom. And to me, freedom is based not only in the place you live, and so many people live in places where they don't have freedom. It's really hard for them to create wealth for themselves, but also financial freedom. And financial freedom means having the cash flow developed in your life so you don't need to think about money anymore. It's not the thing that consumes you. And until you get there, having to think about money a lot is kind of the day-to-day for most people. And you don't need to be there. And you can't be there if you want to have an extraordinary life. I also think that to have an extraordinary life, there needs to be an attitude of gratitude and a practice of gratitude, and the knowledge that abundance is certain. And I think that's a huge lack in most people's life. They do not really believe that. They live in fear, they don't live in love, and they don't recognize the abundance they live in, and they're not able to attract more because they don't believe it. And that is a cornerstone of my life. I also vowed to love deeply and to be an extraordinary resource for others. And that's how Money Loves Women became a thing. That's how it became born, to become an extraordinary resource for others. So the question, why did I start Money Loves Women? Because I want to be an extraordinary resource for others, and I really love being a resource for women, and I love making women successful. And I know that money loves women. It loves everybody. It loves men too. But I think women have a harder time believing that money loves them and wants to come into their life, and that abundance is for them, not for other people only. So I started Money Loves Women because I think that we need more money, more power, and more influence in the hands of women. And I think we need that to create a more peaceful and a more balanced world. And if you look around you, you'll see that that's not what's going on right now. And you don't have to look very far to see that. And when women are influencing that, I think we see much more stability and a lot less ego-driven conflict. And we don't have to look very far to see ego-driven conflict today in our country and elsewhere. So Money Loves Women. And that's why I created my foundational signature program. So I developed, first backing up a little bit, my financial principles. That's my next question to myself. How did you develop your financial principles and what are they? So I developed my financial principles when I read a very interesting story that had a lot of impact on me. And it was written by a gentleman who, as a young man, I think a student, was with a group of other young men, and a gentleman came and talked to them. And he said, I want to teach you how to create wealth. So I took those principles, which clearly had influenced this man, and I think he was the only one in the group who actually took them to heart. But I took those principles and I expanded them, and I adapted them, and I brought them into a greater focus. And those are the principles of my signature course, the skill sets and so forth that grew into my signature course. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what they are. So the first principle is making a decision for wealth. Now, lots of people dream about money, dream about winning the lottery and all kinds of things, but they don't actually make a decision to become wealthy. And by making a decision, I mean a committed decision, a decision that you're going to do no matter what. It doesn't matter what comes at you. It doesn't matter what happens. You are going to focus your life on creating wealth. Now, wealth isn't only money, but money is the thing that confounds women the most. I think women are very good at creating relationship wealth. They're very good at creating family relationships and relationship wealth there. They're very good at supporting their communities to create wealthy outcomes, but they're not very good at managing their own money and creating their own wealth sometimes. And I think we as a group get distracted by some of those other things. And I think they're avoidance techniques at times. So it certainly is for me. And I think lots and lots of women are anxious about money. And that's reasonable considering the fact that we don't get taught about money. It's to lots of people's advantage for us to not know about money, unfortunately, which is maybe why that practice persists. So let's talk a little bit about my pillars: decision, making a decision for wealth, or my stacks of wealth building, making a decision for wealth. And I really love a book that came out a few years ago by Ramit Sethi. And I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he wrote a book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And he's certainly teaching the first steps to be rich. It's not everything, and nor can you teach it all in one book. But what he taught was taking responsibility for your money. And I love his approach. And his approach is decide what really matters to you in your life. It's sort of like living your life in alignment with your values and ideals. And make sure that you spend on that, because you are living one life right now. Maybe you believe in reincarnation, I do, but right now you're living one life. So spend on what you really care about and cut drastically back on the things you don't care about. So if you care about having really good food, then spend on that. If you care about travel, spend on that, obviously within your means. He also teaches two things. Cut back on those things that don't matter to you and expand your means. Save in different buckets for the things that you are going to want, and save for investing. Now, I think it's pretty good teaching. You have to temper it though. It's a great way to start out. It's great for young people, definitely. So look at that book, enjoy it. He's irreverent, and I like that. And he too was taught to be a successful kid. He grew up in an Indian family where if you got an A minus, your one A minus on your report card, your parents were automatically disappointed with your performance. Talks about that, but I'm sure that had something to do with Ramit's success. And then I read all the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books. And I really like Robert Kiyosaki's advice. He flies in the face of lots of contemporary and past advice, in that he doesn't really believe you should get a job. He thinks you should start a business. And business is one of the 10 roads to riches. So some people work at their job, their job, and they save, and they invest well, hopefully, or maybe not, and they eventually retire. And I don't know why you'd work your whole life just to work at something you don't like doing, if that's what's going on, and save for retirement as the only goal, as if retirement was this wonderful activity. And I guess for some it is, but for lots of people, joy in working is a wonderful activity. And maybe you don't work so much full time. I personally take my retirement in installments. I work and I play. And I do lots of other activities and things that I find valuable in my life, even more than play. So there you go. And I never stop learning. So I think that's also a characteristic of a high achiever. So Ramit is teaching, take responsibility for your money. So is Robert Kiyosaki. Take responsibility for your money. Robert takes it to a little different level than Ramit, in that he suggests that once you've figured out how you're making your money, that you decide how much you're going to invest as the very first thing you do with your money. Ramit says to decide what you're going to spend on that you really, really enjoy. Robert Kiyosaki takes it to a little different place, and he said, invest first. So I like that advice too. So invest first. So take responsibility for your money after you've made a committed decision. And you can't really have made a committed decision if you're not taking responsibility for your money. So that means developing a spending plan, deciding what's important to you, and then how do you create excess cash flow? Because if you don't create excess cash flow and don't have the right mindset, which is third step, get your mind under control. So be a guardian of your mind. Decide what thoughts happen up there. Now, most people just have a lot of chatter. Sounds like a monkey up there. We call it the monkey mind. But if you control your thoughts and you develop a positive mental attitude, and constantly are reinforcing yourself in a positive mental attitude. And how do you do that? I think one of the ways you do that is to be grateful and look around you with gratitude, because it's very easy as humans to look around us and say, this is wrong, that's wrong, this isn't working, that's not working, instead of saying, well, what's working? What's great in my life? Isn't it wonderful? And a positive mental attitude is necessary in your mindset. And the mind is a tough cat to control. So you have to be at it all the time and interrupt those negative messages and those discouraging messages and get that part of you under control that is the constant critic. And if you take that constant critic and make that critic into your biggest cheerleader, you can achieve all kinds of things. So we decided making a decision, a committed decision, taking responsibility for your money. That means protecting it. I don't like budgets, but making a spending plan and being realistic about what's going on. Cutting your expenses so you don't live beyond your means. You have to live under your means if you're actually going to create cash flow. And create your spending plan. Make it all happen. So taking responsibility for your money and making sure people don't take it away from you. That requires education and lots of insurance. Yes, insurance is a fact of life. You have to have your insurance. Protect your car, protect your home, protect any wealth you've developed from someone taking it away from you. I have homeowners insurance. I have car insurance. I have key persons insurance. I have my employees bonded, and I'm careful about what I do. And of course, I have malpractice insurance. So you need lots of things like that. And yes, you need cash flow in order to pay for them. So, put your boat in a fast-moving stream. So that's the next piece. After you've settled your mindset, you've recognized those things like I have in my head, women need to have power of their own via money. I actually think that's a good one. Another one is money's hard to come by. I grew up with that. And money's something to be anxious about. And I grew up with that. So those are mindset issues that you need to recognize and then lay to rest. And they're not as easy to lay to rest as we might like, but recognizing them is step number one. So again, decision, responsibility, mindset, and now we get to the skills. Creating excess cash flow. So you need, I don't want to sound crass, but a cash machine, something that generates cash for you. It's not fulfilling if you choose something that's not in alignment with your values and ideals. So if you are prostituting yourself for your cash flow, it's going to eat your soul up. And then who cares how much money you have? Your soul and your health. So you don't want to do that. You want to find work that is fulfilling, that creates excess cash flow. If you love business, then do that by all means. If you can be a professional athlete, hooray, but likelihood of that is very low. So the biggest path to wealth, aside from scrimping and saving, which is not my preferred path, is business. So there's every kind of business you could imagine, and business skills are business skills. And if you have developed your business skills, you can do something that you like or love and develop yourself in the process. I think it's fabulous what you can do in business. You have to learn to lead. You have to learn to communicate. You need a positive mental attitude. You need to be able to handle money and read profit and loss statements. And it's all transferable skills. It's something you can learn. And never has there been more information out there for how to grow and run a business. And I particularly like acquiring businesses, but that's for another day. And you've heard about that on some of my podcasts if you've listened about a business acquisition. And go back and listen to those if that lights your fire. But anyway, creating a cash machine. Okay, now we've got excess cash flow. Now what happens? Okay, this is all for what? Learning to invest. So investing the excess cash flow so your money works so you don't have to work. Hooray, financial freedom. That's what we're looking for. So let's talk about the different kinds of investing that we'll be teaching. So first of all, but let me go back because we have those stacks. Decision for wealth, responsibility for your money, handling your mindset, creating a cash machine, designing your life with wealth in mind. That's what I mean when I say figure out what your cash machine is and make sure it fits with your life. So design your life with wealth in mind. If you choose to change the world by being a social worker, that is a fabulous, wonderful thing. But everyone that I've met who's done that, or many people that I've met who's done that, have decided it was something they couldn't do long term. They were giving up so much of their life energy helping other people in a system that didn't work very well, that demanded huge amounts of their time and energy, that they pivoted to something else. There's no job that you can do that is wasted time, I think. You'll learn something no matter what. In fact, you can make that your focus, especially in your 20s. So supporting this, these stacks, is who you're being while you're doing what you're doing. And that's about self-mastery. That's about emotional IQ. That's about leading with your spiritual self, leading with love, not with fear. And on the other side, and I've run into many people who can't do this, so they can't be successful, is making your life work so you can work. You have to put those things in place that allow you to work, that allow you to focus your energy and your time and your money on creating your financial freedom. So there we have it. I could talk some about the investments, but I think I'm going to save that for a different time. I want to talk about, okay, we've got this excess cash flow. You made your life work so you can work. You've got your pieces in place. We need to talk about that more too on a different podcast. And you are working constantly on your self-mastery. So you are the best person you can be. You are the most aware person, the most connected with your inner psyche and with your external world and your spiritual guidance that you can possibly be. And as you ascend through those levels of awareness and create those greater connections, you become more successful. You automatically get more opportunities. The universe sends you more things that you're already grateful for. So just keep that in mind. It's not woo-woo, it's real. It's physics. So just keep that in mind. So that is my journey. That is my principles. That's the stacks that I've developed for Money Loves Women's signature course. And then we will be teaching investing. And that's what it's all about. I know some of you already feel like you have your foundation in place, and almost anybody can refine it, and that's wonderful. You may want to jump right into learning investing. And I'll talk about that on my next solo cast. So how can you support this mission of getting more money, power, and influence into the hands of women to create a more balanced and peaceful world? The way you can do it is to work on yourself. And once you've made yourself successful, be an extraordinary example for the people around you. Not a loud example, but a true example. And for your family, for your daughters, for your sons, and for all the people you come in contact with. And teach them the principles, because we did not learn this. Will you have to read? Yes, you will. You'll have to read and learn. And that's one of the reasons I developed my signature course. If you want to check it out and get more involved, I really want to support you in this process. And if you want to support this mission, get educated. You are the path to this. And you might get rich in the process. Maybe comfortable. Just financial freedom, maybe. But you might get rich. So, and it's not chance. It's if you decide. So that's the plan. Where do you go if you want to dig into this some more? I want you to have my free financial freedom tracker so you can see where you're going. That's a great way to start because it gets you motivated. And you need to be motivated because you cannot not do anything right now. You will become poorer and poorer if you don't do something. You can only improve in your financial circumstance, or you are spiraling downwards. There's no middle ground. There's no treading water. Don't let anybody make you believe there's treading water. It doesn't exist in finance, in your personal money life. And so there's a link here in our show notes for this, and you can go to that link, or you can go to moneyloveswomen.com/financial-freedom-tracker. So that's moneyloveswomen.com/financial-freedom-tracker. Great. I'd love to have you on board. Every woman needs this. Nobody has all the answers, even though some people look like they do around you, maybe. And you are just a person on the journey. Don't be embarrassed. Don't feel fearful. Control your fear, control your anxiety, control those past money messages, and get yourself on the road to financial freedom, because you are the answer to the world's need for more peace and more balance. You are the answer, and we need everybody. We need all the women we can get. So go to moneyloveswomen.com/financial-freedom-tracker. It's free. And my course is incredibly inexpensive. So if you want to build out your foundation and build some confidence, go for it. It's a great course. Maybe you'll get rich in the process. I sure hope so. I would love to bring you along with me. I would love that. So this is Dr. Deborah Ekstrom for the Money Loves Women podcast. To your health, to your wealth, and to your happiness. And especially your wealth today. That's where we want to take you. Okay. Enjoy. May blessings rain down upon you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Money Loves Women podcast. Please leave us a rating and review so we know how we can improve. Visit moneyloveswomen.com to gain more insight into how to live an extraordinary life.